Hey everybody, Chief Meteorologist Brad Petovich here. I want to focus mainly tonight on Idalia, but I want to start with some flash flood warnings out there in our area, and I'm going to go into that first. Then we'll get into the Florida impacts for those that are following me on there, in the Florida area, follow me on mine, or if you have friends or family there. Then we'll get into the Carolinas. So we'll kind of go step by step here. First things first, though, I would be remiss if I didn't mention we got a flash flood warning till 3 o'clock in the morning for the Statesville area. This includes Iredell County. Real heavy rain, about 2 to 4 inches of rain has fallen in this area, and an additional 1 to 2 inches. This storm's not moving. This is the trend across the Carolinas today because we've got slow-moving storms, and none of this is directly associated with a tropical system yet. Just kind of shows you how crazy the pattern is. If we widen this out, we'll show you the 2 tropical systems we do have out there. You can see off the East Coast, boy, Franklin's a monster, thank goodness that's not heading our way. And then this is Idalia. It's starting to kind of get a little bit stronger tonight. It's trying to get its act together. It's still struggling a little bit, but it's starting to see a burst of convection or thunderstorm activity near the middle of it. So I do think it is going to expand a little bit tonight. I was going to put the 3D satellite in here. Let me switch this though real quickly. That was the image right before sunset. So what I'll do is I'll switch to the infrared here, and we'll go to kind of a brighter look here so you can kind of see what's going on here. There we go. So you see these brighter white, those are cold cloud tops. So you could see that big explosion there tonight. Let me give the latest. This was the intermediate advisory. 8 o'clock, you could see winds are still 70 miles per hour. It is moving north at 8 miles per hour. The pressure continues to fall. So we're noticing pressure falls, but we have yet to see a significant uptick in the actual, let me move my head out of the way. I'll move it down here briefly. We have yet to see a big uptick in the winds yet. I think that rapid intensification though is going to happen here shortly. So let me show you the track. We'll do an update on the storm track here. And again, this has not been updated. They don't update this until the 11 o'clock advisory. So if you're looking for updates for track guidance, they come at 5 p.m., 11 p.m., 5 a.m., 5 a.m., and then 5 p.m. and 11 p.m. So on the East Coast. Now, if you're in the Central Time Zone, it's a little bit different, obviously. So at 2 a.m., we expect this to be 85 miles per hour, moving to the northeast, and again, making landfall somewhere in the Big Bend area of Florida. Now, this is where the center is going to go. This is really crucial here. We learned, unfortunately, a lot of folks learned a horrible lesson with Ian. They focused too much on where the center is. The center of the storm could be anywhere in this red. But you remember, the storm is a couple hundred miles wide, so the impacts aren't just in the red area. In fact, if you're east of the center, or south in this case, like in Fort Myers with Ian, or Tampa in this case, you're still squarely in the worst weather. You know, I always equate this to, imagine you had a puppy or a dog or a small child, and they're in the median of an interstate. They're not in traffic, but they're right on the edge, and you go, it's fine. Nothing's going to hit it there. Well, somebody just swerves a little bit, and you know what happens. So it's the same thing with these hurricanes, especially in the coastal sections of Florida, because if it's paralleling the coast, just a little wobble, boom, it's right there. So you can never let your guard down on these storms like this if you're anywhere near it. Don't get caught up in what the cone is. The only way you completely escape this is if you're way over here or way over here. Anybody in here pretty much has a risk and should pay attention, especially to the right side where the worst weather is. So just a heads up, that's kind of why you got to pay attention to these things. Now for the Carolinas, the storm does weaken, but here's the problem in the Carolinas. So as this moves up the coast like this, right, it's going to be heading up in this direction. We've got the swells from Franklin, we've got the flow around the storm already pushing water, and we've got astronomical high tides. There's a full moon on Wednesday. It's a super full moon, which is, I hate the super moon term, but basically it means it's the moon's closest approach to the Earth. Perigee moon is the technical term for it, which means tides typically run way above normal in this situation. So the combination of all three of these is going to make the storm surge and water levels here much higher than a 60 mile per hour tropical storm. So just heads up, this is going to be a surprising storm, I think, for a lot of folks. The water levels are going to be quite high. So the timing of this is going to start Wednesday into Thursday morning. This is 2 a.m. So Wednesday night into Thursday morning. By Thursday afternoon, the Outer Banks are being impacted. But here's the good news. By Thursday night and Friday, this thing's gone. So the weekend looks absolutely fabulous. Now, why are we concerned about this storm? You've heard the rapid intensification part of this. This is going to be moving over the warmest waters in the Atlantic. Some of the water up in here in this area right here is basically around 90 to 95 degrees. And it's not shallow warm water, it's deep warm water. So as it moves over, that is fuel. The same time, there's a little dip in the jet stream here, which is going to vent the storm. There's high pressure behind my head here. That's going to wrap around and vent it. So the combination of being over warm water and a favorable outflow pattern means the storm, I equated it this morning to, you've got tons of gasoline, you've got a fire, and on top of that, you've got someone with a billows blowing air into it. You know, one of the redneck things I do when I'm trying to start a bonfire is I take the leaf blower and I blow it in there to get the thing to go crazy, because if you add a bunch of air to it, it goes nuts. Well, this is the version of that where the atmosphere is venting this like crazy, and you've got tons of gasoline, in this case hot water, which is going to make this storm go gangbusters real quickly. So the concern here is obviously storm surge, but winds are going to be pretty high as well. Look at the storm surge warnings. This is a great indication of why you need to take this storm seriously, because the storm surge warnings go basically all the way down to Fort Myers. So again, remember where the track was? The track's up in here somewhere. Boy, there's big storm surge here, big storm surge here, and even storm surge watches down here. So the entire West Coast is under the threat for water. You're not going to escape it. And everyone gets caught up, oh, it shifted there, it shifted there. Guys, that's not going to shift this, okay? You know, these little shifts aren't impacting the water that much. They're impacting the wind a little bit and maybe what side of the storm you're on, but remember, the water's getting pushed up regardless. It's a bulldozer, right? Okay? That storm's coming north. The water's being pushed. So if it jaunts off to the right, those swells and water are still coming towards the coast. It's not like the water just stops, right? We've seen this a lot. When I worked in New Orleans, you saw this a lot. Big storms in the Gulf of Mexico, even as they weaken, if they're there for a day or two or they're intensifying as they're approaching the coast, they push that wall of water. That inertia or momentum is built up, and the water can't go anywhere. It's not like the water just stops, okay? It's already been pushed, all right? It's like a swing. Once you push it, even if you stop pushing, it's going to swing back and forth a couple times before it calms down. That's what happens with the water. It's like sloshing around in a bathtub, okay? So the water doesn't just stop when the storm shifts directions a little bit. It just stays there. Now, what you really worry about is the rapid intensification, because as the storm gets closer, it's getting stronger and stronger, and it's probably going to get stronger all the way up to landfall because that water's so warm. Now we move up into South Carolina, and tonight, if you follow me on Facebook or Twitter, you saw I posted about this. The water levels in Charleston are already running flooding. The king tide's already doing their action, and the swells from Franklin, honestly. But as the winds pick up ahead of the system and the king tides occur maximized on Wednesday with the full moon, you're going to see flooding. The flood waters are going to come up, you know, pretty quickly there. So let me show you the impacts. I got a great impact graphic. The first impact I'll talk about is rainfall. Rainfall is going to be huge. You could see it affecting most of Florida, coastal Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. The one thing with the rain threat, now this is where the shift in the track can have an impact. If this should shift offshore a little more, well, obviously it would stay stronger, but it would pull in drier air. There's going to be a very tight gradient from who sees the heavy rain band and who doesn't. These banding features are kind of difficult to forecast sometimes. Let me move my head down here. So when you see that, you know, that tight, what we call gradient, if it shifts east or west, that's where the track can have a little bit more of a more significant impact on whether you get flooded or not. It doesn't impact the storm surge as much, but it does impact the rainfall totals quite a bit, and obviously the strong winds with that. And speaking of those winds, you know, we are going to see high wind gusts in parts of Florida. That's pretty much a given. You know, if this becomes a major hurricane, especially intensifying at landfall, you know, there'll be 100 to 20 mile per hour gust in there. On the coast of the Carolinas, you're looking at tropical storm force winds, 40 to 45, and a small tornado risk, by the way. That's not totally out of the woods yet. In fact, let me show you the severe weather outlook. We have a low risk today over our area, but let me show you on Wednesday. You already see that's for tornadoes along the coast as it moves north. So let me do some timings here. I'm going to start, we'll we'll go south to north. We'll start in South Carolina first with these timings, and I did post these, and I will continue to update these as I do. I'm gonna move my head out of the way here so you can see them a little better. So this is the timing from Hilton Head to Charleston to Folly. Folly Beach actually has, it looks like a little bit of hurricane force winds. You know, there might be just 74 miles per hour. That's what it is. But you see the idea. Late Wednesday into Wednesday night, all the way up to the Grand Strand. So that kind of gives you a timing standpoint for the strongest winds. Also, that will likely be the strongest surge. Those will be pretty close. The surge sometimes lags a little bit behind. It's all about your tide cycle, so just check that out. And then as we move up the coast, I will show you some of the other places in North Carolina. So basically going from South Carolina north, just to give you some timing scenarios. So from Holden Beach to Oak Isle to Wilmington, Wrightsville, Atlantic Beach, Morehead City, Hatteras, and then Kitty Hawk more into Wednesday night and early Thursday. So some of this, this is a 12-hour window here. So if you cut that in half, 6 hours here, this is going to be early on Thursday morning, into Thursday morning, even into midday Thursday, and kind of moving out. I hate comparing storms because every storm is different, but if anyone remembers Isaias intensifying real quickly and then happening right at high tide and the water levels surged much higher than expected, you can kind of see this kind of setup with Idalia. So just be cautious of that. That is in the cards. So if you got caught off guard by Isaias, this is one you got to pay attention to. So let's talk about the rainfall, because in the Charlotte area, in the Western Carolinas, we've seen heavy rain. We've got flooding going on tonight, flash flooding. That's just because of the stalled front. So while I can tell you Idalia won't probably have as big effect on the Western Carolinas as the Eastern Carolinas, Idalia still probably could bring some moisture in here. The stalled front is doing enough damage by itself, because today and tomorrow we're under a medium risk for flash flooding. Idalia, you can see there as we go into Wednesday, that high risk, that's for the flooding. That's where we anticipate the highest levels of water. And I will do a quick update on our local rainfall forecast here, just to give you an idea on additional rainfall. So this would be just in the next 72 hours or so. You can see an additional 1 to maybe 4 or 5 inches. So that's a lot of rain, especially when a lot of areas saw 2 to 4 inches today and 2 to 4 inches yesterday. So by the end of the week, we could see some significant, totals there. Now, something else to keep in mind with all of this is, I'm going to go back to the satellite and radar here, are some of these surge totals in Florida. I do want to revisit those briefly, because I'll just really quickly go through these for the people that have family and friends in Florida. You can see all the way from South Florida, 3 to 6. Fort Myers area, even some areas could see 3 to 6 foot storm surge. Tampa Bay is interesting. There's actually some areas that are in 6 to 9. Tampa Bay is kind of an interesting scenario, and this is where people in Tampa Bay get caught. Well, the storm's going to my north, but guys, this is like a giant bathtub. The water's getting pushed in here. Even if the storm's up here, once that water gets in here, the water can't go back out because the wind's still pushing it in. So what happens is the water slowly fills up Tampa Bay, and each tide can't go back out because of the surge, so it gets higher and higher and higher. So you end up with some pretty crazy totals in there. That's why you're seeing evacuations in a lot of Pinellas counties. Have done pretty big evacuation. There's going to be some big water in Tampa Bay, more so than people think. Now further north, this is where the real surge goes up, and it says 9 foot, but that's 8 to 12 feet. The king tide is going to play a big role in this as well. And Cedar Key in particular, I've been looking at some of the Cedar Key. This could be a record breaker. The superstorm in 1993 actually had the highest surge in this part of Florida, which was a non-tropical system. That was a winter storm. This could actually surpass it. So pretty significant system overall for Florida. I just want everybody, whether you're there in Florida watching this or you know somebody, please learn from Ian. Unfortunately, a lot of people, meteorologists kind of knew this was going to happen eventually, but a lot of people did not evacuate for Ian because they got caught up in the cone or they didn't think it was going to happen. Here's the thing. That was a tragic event. A lot of people died in Ian for no reason, in my opinion, but let's not let them have died in vain. Use the mistakes made there to tell you that we should not make those same mistakes again. I know for a lot of folks in Florida, it's like, I have never been hit, or I've lived this area for X amount of years. I've heard this everywhere I live. Storms never hit here. The surge never happens here. Everyone says that until it does. Okay? That's the thing. Everyone says that until it happens. I heard that pre-Katrina, pre-Andrew, pre-Floyd, pre-Matthew. Well, I can name you every storm, and there's somebody I could tell you that would say, oh, it wasn't going to happen. And it did. And those are the people that leave now. Unfortunately, it takes disasters for people to take precautions. So that's why I said learn from other people. Just because you personally didn't experience it, other people did. Let their lessons be the one to you. I mean, that's really the way you got to treat this. So just a quick update. We'll be getting an update at 11 o'clock here on the storm. I will post a vlog tomorrow morning. We'll get more into details. I'm going to probably start focusing less on Florida. I will do a little bit on Florida up until landfall, but my main responsibility is going to be here in the Carolinas, but I will focus on the coastal Carolinas as well, just not the Charlotte area, Western Carolinas. I will focus on all the Carolinas with this. We'll do more in-depth storm surge forecasting because we will have a better idea, I think, tomorrow, and especially tomorrow night, probably about what the storm surge is going to look like, because in the next 24 hours, we're going to find out if Idalia is going to become a major hurricane with rapid intensification. Have a great night.